Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing the Open Grade League team that helped me become one of the first trainers in the world to make it to Expert in this season of Go Battle League. Now this team is built around a very powerful core, and that is Pangoro and Starmie. These two Pokemon cover each other's weaknesses very nicely. I'm running Pangoro on the lead as I felt a lot of teams are disrespecting it, and Starmie as a sweeper, as in an endgame scenario, up energy and up shields, it is a terrifying Pokemon to go up against. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and I'll be showcasing some selected battles from the climb. Picking up a bad lead in the first match, leading Pangoro into Annihilate, and I am going to save switch out of this matchup and send in the Shadow Drapion. Drapion can do okay here, but realistically, my opponent is not going to let me win switch advantage in this matchup. But honestly, I am okay with that. My goal here as I tank the Ice Punch and make the Aqua Tail is just to get damage on this Pokemon, because if I can get it lower, then suddenly it's a lot easier to deal with later on. They are pretty low, and I know they don't have close combat, so I'm now going to bring in Pangoro. Opponent is going to hard switch out because their Annihilate was low. They bring in Feraligatr, and Feraligatr is an absolutely terrible matchup against Pangoro. Pangoro has identical pacing, but Pangoro is always going to win the CMP tie. And here, my opponent was actually one behind due to the fact that their switch-in took a turn, so I can overfarm by one, go for the close combat, and pick up the knockout. If they send in Annihilate, I'm going to try and snipe with some Psy Waves. They are pretty low. In comes the Annihilate. I send in the Starmie, and in the back is Morpeko. And at this point, I have a very clear path to victory. Surf is going to inflict way too much damage. If they Aura Wheel, I can just farm down with Pangoro and make a Night Slash. My opponent goes for a Psychic Fangs bait, and now I can just go for a resisted Psy Wave down. In comes Annihilate. That's getting Psy Wave down as well, and that is a good game. Moving to the next match, another bad lead, Pangoro versus Azumarill. I'm going to save switch to Shadow Drapion. Shadow Drapion does also lose to Azumarill. Azumarill here, interestingly enough, does not build up to a Play Rough. Instead, they just opt to go for the Ice Beam, and then we see a switch out into Sableye. This switch seems quite peculiar, but the only way it makes sense is if they're running Azumarill Double Ghost, in which case, they can't stay in with the Azumarill because then they would just get swept by the Pangoro. So instead, they're forced to actually send a Ghost type into the Drapion to preserve the Azumarill for dealing with the Pangoro later on. My opponent is going to win the CMP tie. I am going to be committing the shield because I want to grab their final shield. They're the Shadow Sableye, which means that Pangoro is a complete wall to their energy. So I can send in the Pangoro, tank whatever they throw, it is going to be the Power Gem, and get a nice Karate Chop farm down. In comes Azumarill. I'm going to be sending in the Starmie in the back. There's the second Ghost type, and it all now makes sense. There is Corsola. Corsola will be hit with the Surf. Surf will do significant damage. Corsola is going to make it to Surf number 2. Opponent just committing to fast move damage here. The Surf's going to land. They get KO'd. Back in comes Azumarill, and Azumarill is able to get the farm down. But now I have Pangoro, and Pangoro should be in a spot where two close combats can knock out the Azumarill. Close combat number 1 is going to connect. I'm going to overfarm as much as I can and go for close combat number 2. That will be enough damage to knock out the Azumarill, and I'm able to take the win. Moving to the next match, Pangoro finally sees a good lead as I'm leading into Galarian Corsola. One thing I do like about this team is very strong into Galarian Corsola, with of course the Pangoro and the Drapion having very positive matchups. One area where I will say the team is kind of weak is if you run into a Jumpluff. Jumpluff is a bit uncomfortable to deal with across the board. Here my opponent sends in Wigglytuff. They get the charm through as I fire off the close combat, and now I'm going to send in Drapion. Drapion, very close to the back-to-back Aqua Tails. Opponent will have to undertap a Swift if they want to get this move off without committing a shield, and they're going to do just that. I decide to shield because realistically I don't want to take charm damage on the Starmie, and I actually undertap here because the Aqua Tail should KO and I won't take the charm, but they actually survive on 1 HP, so that was a miscalculation on my part. In the back is Dugong, and at this point, I should be in a very good position to win this game. The crunch is going to land, do get a defense drop, and the Shadow Drapion refuses to get KO'd, making it to crunch number 2 and forcing a shield from my opponent. They do have quite a bit of energy on the Dugong, but I have a Starmie, and Starmie has a terrific matchup going up against Dugong. Dugong, I will commit the shield as they go for the drill run. There's the switch out to the Corsola, and I'm able to make it to the Surf. Surf We'll come very close to KOing here. Opponent is going to tank that on 1 HP, the second time they've had a 1 HP survive. But the good news for me is even at this range, a Drone's not going to KO. I can survive this. Starmie able to hang on and make it to the surf. And Starmie putting on a clinic in the endgame there, knocking out the Dugong and securing the win. Pangoro versus Shadow Dragonite, a terrible lead. I'm going to stay in this matchup, and I'm going to farm up and bluff the close combat. Close combat is resisted, but it does do more damage. So if you just straight Night Slash, it's actually get a boost there. I didn't see that I got the boost before I switched out, so that's my fault. Maybe I should have stayed in. But realistically, even with a boost, you're not going to do great in that matchup. So I think I kind of had to leave no matter what. And they're going to bring in a Bibarel to the Shadow Drapion. Bibarel will be firing off a Surf to deliver a knockout. I could potentially go for farm on the Pangoro, but I think energy on the Starmie will actually serve me a little bit better. So I'm going to send in the Starmie to shield once as they go for the Hyper Fang and exit pretty close to a move, because that Dragonite is not going to appreciate any charge move that's thrown. In the back, it's going to be for Alligator firing off the Power Gem. This will inflict serious damage. I now send in Pangoro. They're going to bring in the Dragonite, and I make it to the close combat. This will inflict massive damage. Close combat gets them to 1 HP, and I make a game-losing mistake. I had to get myself lower before KOing them, because by not doing that, the Feraligatr Shadow Claws me down. They have too much energy, and they outpace by a singular turn. If I get that Surf, that's game over, and I can win. But I stayed a little too healthy when Karate Chopping down, and that mistake is actually what cost me the win. We move to the next match, leading into a Shadow Marowak. Against this matchup, I really like baiting as the Pangoro, because it's very awkward as the Marowak to try and call whether the Panda's going for a close combat and dip or the Night Slash bait. So a lot of them do really like to shield, and if you double bait, it ends up being a very clean win for Pangoro. So I will go for another bait here with the Night Slash. Opponent will commit the shield. They're looking for the farm down, but I do have a very high rank Pangoro. I'm able to tank that Mud Slap, make the close combat, and my opponent actually ends up losing switch advantage and shield advantage. In comes the Talonflame, and I'm going to respond with Starmie. Starmie just has a lot of value up energy into a lot of teams, so I will commit the shield and just look to overfarm quite a bit. They go for a Brave Bird, and in the back is Dugong. Oh no. And Dugong is about to get absolutely shredded by a Power Gem. Power Gem is going to connect, absolutely massive damage. Dugong will go for the Drill Run. Drill Run, of course, not going to be enough to knock out, so I'm just going to get them low here, and I can actually farm all the way down. I'm at the double Power Gem. I'm not going to need a second one. But the good news is Drapion just gets the battle off here. Drapion completely not needed in this game, and we're able to get the win. Pangoro versus Azumarill again. Very bad lead, but we have two Pokemon in the back that can deal with this pretty fine. So I send in the Drapion. Like the previous Azumarill player, this one doesn't build up to the Play Rough. They just go for the Ice Beam, and I'm very happy to no shield and Ice Beam, and now they're going to bring in their own Drapion. I have a ton of energy. Aqua Tail is going to connect. I'm farming up to the back-to-back, but I get the back-to-back when they get their Aqua Tail, so this is a CMP tie, which means unless I shield, I'm not getting my second Aqua Tail, and I do not want to commit a shield in this mid-game matchup. Instead, I would just rather go for farm. I was able to bait out the Dark type, which is good, because that way I won't have to deal with the Drapion on the Starmie. And now, once the Azumarill re-hits the field of play, it's going to be Starmie time. In comes Starmie. In the back is Primeape, and oh my goodness, they are so weak in the back. But this is still a little bit of a tricky situation. They're going to make two Rage Fists, so I'm going to no shield the first. It is super effective damage, and it does quite a bit, but they're not going to be able to farm me down. And as long as I have a shield for Pangoro to hide behind, we've seen that once the Azumarill is at about 2/3 HP, suddenly Pangoro up a shield can beat it. I will fire off the Power Gem. Power Gem is going to be shielded. Now I switch into Pangoro, and they're definitely low enough where I can go for the double close combat and take the win. So for a second time in this showcase, we have Pangoro knocking out an Azumarill, showcasing the flexible play that a lot of these Pokemon have. Even in a type disadvantage matchup, Pangoro is just an absolute beast. Tricky lead in the next match, Pangoro into Talonflame. Technically, Pangoro can have some pretty decent matchups there. I believe it can win the twos, but I have 2 Mons with water moves in the back, so there's no reason to stay in and play it out. I can just send in the Drapion. I get to land the Aqua Tail. I'll shield up the Fly. Out comes Annihilate, and that is really not a fun Pokemon for this team to see when it has a shield advantage. I farm up a ton, bait with the Aqua Tail, able to grab a shield from the opponent, and they are going to fire off a Rage Fist to deny my potential crunch. And now, do I trust in Starmie? I'm sending it in. These Psy Waves absolutely deleting the Annihilate. They're boosted, so I have to shield. My win con is to commit to a farm down here. Come on, Starmie. Starmie gets the farm down. They fall just short of a double boosted Rage Fist. And now I have so much energy. They're going to bring in Morpeko. And down energy, Morpeko's about to get shredded. Surf number 1 is going to be shielded, going for Surf number 2. And importantly, they only have 2 Thunder Shocks of energy. So after I land that, I can switch into Pangoro. They get KO'd right as they make the Aura Wheel, and they will concede the match. We actually have the same lead as the previous game leading into a Talonflame. So same game plan as before, the safe switch to the Drapion. Out comes a Gastrodon. Gastrodon, obviously not a fun Pokemon for Drapion to see. For Drapion, I am going to be firing off the Crunch. I get a shield, I get a defense drop as well, which is quite nice. But this is going to end up into a very uncomfortable 50-50. I actually get a second defense drop. I'll be bringing in the Pangoro, but I have to make the call. They can make a Body Slam and an Earth Power. So the call I have to make is which will they go for first. I say they're going to bait. I no shield, and I get it wrong. That is very unfortunate, as now I don't want to shield a Body Slam, so I'm just going to let it go, and I'm going to try and sweep with the Starmie. Starmie versus the world, getting the farm down. And what do they have as their final Pokemon? It's going to be a regular Feraligatr. Feraligatr, the Shadow Claws are tearing through the Starmie, and they will just go straight for the Hydro Cannon. They're going to switch into the Talonflame. I'm farming up with the Starmie, waiting until the last second to throw the Surf. I think I should have thrown the Surf slightly earlier to not let that second Incinerate land. It's going to be very, very close here. In the end game, can I make it? 2-2 moves here. I'm very close. Surf is going to be shielded, and I can't get there. And that game was lost, entirely my fault. I threw the Surf late enough that the second Incinerate registered, and that was the difference between winning and losing. We pick up a disastrous lead in the next match, going up against the regional champion, Kazim, as he leads with his favorite Pokemon, that is Whimsicott. Grass types that have a resistance to fighting are going to be an issue for this team. So Jumpluff is a bit uncomfortable if it's not on the Drapion. Of course, Fairy Winds absolutely destroy the Pangoro, and Energy Ball would do very, very well into the Starmie. And Whimsicott is much the same, where Whimsicott is going to be a very difficult Pokemon to deal with. Here my opponent is going to fire off the Aqua Tail. I am going to go for the Night Slash to deny their second Aqua Tail, and hope against hope that Starmie is going to be able to sweep here. But to sweep, I'm going to have to get through that Whimsicott, and that is not an easy task whatsoever. Whimsicott is going to be spamming out these Seed Bombs at lightning pace. They have Feraligatr in the back, and this is really not great for me. I fire off the Power Gem. This will inflict massive damage, but just not enough to pick up the KO. Feraligatr hangs on, and that unfortunately will basically just sink me here. I'm going to go for the Surf Bait and be able to grab a shield. I basically need to make a perfect catch, but even if I do, they can just go for an undercharge. I try for the catch. I don't get the catch. If I get the close combat, I can win, but my opponent is too good. He's just not going to let me have any opportunity to get back in this game. I'm unable to make the close combat, and unfortunately, he just played very cleanly there, and there wasn't really an opportunity for me to get a win. All right, we move into the next match. Terrible lead, Pangoro into Toxapex. The safe switch to the Shadow Drapion. Shadow Drapion absolutely manhandles Toxapex. So typically, Toxapex users are forced to stay in here, and it just makes life very uncomfortable. I land the Crunch. Out comes a Diggersby, and this is very, very okay. Diggersby is something that Drapion up energy can handle quite nicely. I'm more than happy to commit the shield here and respect a potential Scorching Sands, because I just want to get this Diggersby into a range where I can farm it with Pangoro. Because as we've seen time and time again, even if Pokemon have a resistance to fighting, no one has told Pangoro this fact, and Pangoro is oh so good at KOing things endgame with close combats. So forcing the CMP tie is perfect, because I just want to set up the Pangoro so that way I'm going to be able to get a bunch of energy. In comes the Pangoro. Unfortunately, I do get the one-turn Bring and Lag. It doesn't actually impact my ability to farm down, as they did survive that Karate Chop, but it's still just frustrating to see. I snipe with a Psywave from the Starmie. In the back, it is a Talonflame, and this poor opponent is about to get absolutely shredded by Starmie. Starmie over-farming perfectly, firing off the Surf, grabbing the shield. Opponent now at 4 Incinerates. There's still 1 off the next fly. So I can safely shield up, throw 4 Psywaves and the Surf, and this will cleanly knock out. The opponent does have a lot of energy on the Toxapex, but these Psywaves are just going to shred through their health, and that forces their hand. They can't brine, they have to Sludge Wave, and that's all their energy. And then Pangoro is going to be able to farm up to a Night Slash plus a Close Combat, and this is what's going to win us the game. The energy on Pangoro proving clutch even against these anti-fighters, as the Night Slash Close Combat combination devastates that Toxapex. We get the win, and as you see here, we are able to make it to Expert. And I do have 2 bonus battles here as well, the first of which against multiple-time regional champion Lyle Jeffs. Great lead for me. Pangoro into the Corsola. Opponent is going to save switch into Whiscash. Whiscash, not a Pokemon this team is well equipped to handle. I Close Combat, I send in the Starmie, but Whiscash is going to be able to double up on the Mud Bombs here. They aren't quite at the double, but they will get there before I farm down, and it looks like Mud Bomb does actually cleanly 2-shot me. So, much to my chagrin, I'm forced to actually go down a shield. And that's not great, because now Corsola is going to get a pretty significant farm down. Corsola is going to be met with back-to-back Surfs from the Starmie, and the Surfs do add up quite a bit over time, but I'm worried because this means that whatever he has in back is going to have a 2-shield advantage. Corsola now going to be met with the Pangoro. I'm farming up, and did you see that? He waited a turn, caught on Wigglytuff, snuck a charm, and I lose half my HP. What a devastating play. There's a reason why he is a multiple-time regional champion. My goodness. And now our switch timers are misaligned. And the moment I realize their switch timers are misaligned, I realize there's not a way for me to win unless I get a perfect undercharge. Because he can throw right here, his switch clock will be up, and he can switch into the Corsola. I have to go for a perfect undercharge that will put him into Karate Chop downrange. I go for the undercharge, I switch in Pangoro, and he's going to read that switch in and fire off the Power Gem. The Karate Chop down by Pangoro. I didn't undercharge enough. I don't make the move. And unfortunately, despite the favorable team comp, I just got outplayed. Hopping into the final match, a bad lead, Pangoro into Ariados. For Ariados, you're going to want to immediately switch into the Drapion because you make the Aqua Tail before they make the lunge. Aqua Tail is going to land, that does very valuable damage, and I'm never in danger of being farmed down by an Ariados, so I'm very fine tanking the lunge. Opponent now going to send out Feraligatr. For Feraligatr, I'm just going to fire off the debuff Crunch. They can no-shield it because of the debuff, but it inflicts quite a bit of damage, and I do get a defense drop. I actually get to the Aqua Tail here, so it looks like my opponent is going to go for a 1-shield farm down. I do not want to let that happen, so I will aggressively switch out into Pangoro, and I'm very fine double shielding, because a Shadow Hydro Cannon will do more than a lunge from Ariados. So I double shield the Pangoro. My opponent, their clock's up. They send in the Ariados. And for Ariados, now it's going to have to deal with a Night Slash. This will not knock out, but it does quite a lot of damage. There's going to be the lunge from my opponent. And lunge is going to take me pretty close to the red health. I'm going to farm up a ton, switch into the Starmie. So I bank a Close Combat. And Starmie is able to get the Psywave down. In the back is going to be a Shadow Bibarel. And this game is over because I have a Close Combat loaded. The Power Gem is going to be shielded by my opponent. Bibarel farming up a ton of energy. And Hyper Fang can knock me out. That's very fine. They go for a Surf. I actually tank the Surf on 1 HP. They get a switch out and a catch there. So they're able to make a catch on a Feraligatr. And now here I just have to throw a Psywave. And the moment I see that rollout start, I can switch into Pangoro, combo play to ensure that they don't get to use their Surf. All in all, this team ended up working out very, very well for me. In the sets that I played, I went 3-2, 3-2, 4-1, so 10-5 in my climb to Expert. Overall, I do think It's a team that does require a little bit of nuance just because Pangoro and Starmie are not the tankiest mons around, but I do think it's a very strong team. It's played in an ABC style where you don't necessarily always have to switch out because Drapion and Starmie don't share a lot of weaknesses, but it's a very well balanced team, and overall, yeah, it ended up doing some pretty great numbers for me today, and being one of the first experts in the world is something that I am quite proud of. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.